The original z-score model was developed when I was a graduate student at UCLA in the mid-1960s, believe it or not. And it's still being used today, in fact, used perhaps even more than when we first developed it. In those days, the development of computerized credit risk models was in its infancy, and we were the so-called pioneers in this to develop what's called a multivariate, many variables analyzed at the same time, to analyze the credit risk and eventually the probability of default of different companies. In those days, it was very primitive with respect to computer science. It was the beginning of mainframe computers being available on college campuses to be used for research, both for PhD students like myself and for professors in the social science community, in this case, in the finance industry. And in those days, again, it was, while it was early days for computers, it was a tremendous time to innovate by analyzing large numbers of variables at the same time, which was impossible until mainframe computers were available on college campuses. And that was in the mid-1960s. I'm convinced that if I was a student there a few years earlier, I wouldn't have had the computer power to do that. And a few years later, somebody else might have done it. So timing is really important, not only, of course, in these models, but in life in general. Over the years, that model has been adapted, has been adopted by many different users over the last 50 years or so. And I'm very pleased and maybe even a little surprised that it has survived all these years. And so you may ask the question, why? One, it's simple, really easy to understand. Two, it's very accurate still, 80 to 90% within 2 years of predicting bankruptcy correctly. And three, it's free. And so you don't need to do it. But the more important thing for our purposes as a provider of small and medium-sized model, it was the format and the early stage of development to eventually to be applied to small and medium-sized firms.